Okay, so we continue on the second part. Okay, in the processing cycle, data processing cycle. So the second step is data storage. Okay, data storage. Alright, so the data storage, one of the things that you need to understand that the company's data are the one that most important resources to the company. Okay, so the data, all the business activities of the companies. Okay, so that's considered as the important resources to the company. And then the accountants here, their role is they need to understand how data are organized and stored in the AIS, okay, and how they can be accessed, and know also how to manage data for the maximum corporate use. Okay, so you as an accountant, you need to know how data that they already captured, that we discussed in the part 1 just now, the how they being organized in the storage, okay, and then how they being stored in the how the data being stored in the system, okay, and then you already store the data, and then how the data can be accessed. You want to access the data, okay, and then how you know how to manage data so that you can use the maximum use of the data. Okay, so that's related to the data storage. So actually what you did learn in the FAR subject, okay, of course you're familiar with the word ledger and also the apa ni, journal, right? Journal and ledger. So those are the one of the way they use it as the to store the data. Okay, so I think this one you're already familiar with the terms for ledger, for the subsidiary ledger. Okay, so I just go through quickly. Ledger is the book of accounts that reflect the financial effects of the firm's transaction as they are posted from the various journals. Okay, so they have general ledger, they have subsidiary ledger. So normally the general ledger is at the summary level data, okay, for each of the components in the accounts lah, okay, asset, liability, equity, revenue, expenses account of the organisation. So they have general ledger to as the summary level data. Then they goes to the subsidiary ledger. They will record all the detailed data for any general ledger account that has many individual sub accounts. For example, they have account receivable, account payable, that one we call it as the subsidiary ledger. So if you refer to this apa nama ni, figure, okay, so this is the flow of information from the economic event to the general ledger. Okay, they capture customers order, okay, they use the source document that we discussed just now, the sales order, and then they enter into the sales journal. So this is the symbol of the document, symbol of the entering to the system ni, and then they post to the GL. Okay, and then at the same time also they post to the subsidiary ledger, account receivable subsidiary ledger, and then at the end normally they will do the reconciliation, periodically reconcile subsidiary ledger to the GL, so that this is one to the one of the control to confirm the transaction. Okay, so this is the way how they capture data, store the data. And then if you refer to this one, okay, so this is where the relationship between the subsidiary ledger and the GL, okay, so this is where they do the reconciliation, okay, and then the role of the control accounts here, they can help maintain the accuracy of the AIS data. Alright, so I think this one you need to refresh back what you did learn in the subject FAR previously. Okay, so this is related to that one, how they organize the data in the ledger and apa nama ni, journal. Okay, I will not go through in detail lah this one. Alright, and then the other things that they discuss here is on how they want to assign the numbers that we call as the coding techniques. Okay, so this is the systematic assignment of numbers or letters to items so that they can classify and organize the data. So this is how they manage the data, organize data in the storage. So they use coding. Okay, gunakan coding. So this is systematic assessment lah. Okay, so they can use letter, they can use numbers for the coding. So we discuss here 4 types of coding technique. Okay, so generally data in ledger also they gonna organize using these coding techniques. Alright, the first one we discuss on the sequence code. So sequence code is the items, the items are numbered consecutively to ensure that there will be no gaps in the sequence. So this sequential, maknanya dia numbering tu the numbering is in sequence, okay, consecutively. So as example that we discussed in the input just now is on the source document. Remember source document, one of the control they use pre-numbering of source document. So that's one of the coding techniques also here. Okay, so they use the sequence code. So one of the advantage of using this technique, they can support the reconciliation of the batch of transaction. For example, they have at the end of the day, they collect all the source document, okay, and then in one batch, they kumpulkan semua dokumen satu batch, okay, and then they can check. Okay, they can check the sequence of the number of the document. So from there they know which documents are missing, or maybe ada duplication of the document. But if let's say kalau sequence tu maknanya dia kena ada satu dokumen satu number lah. Dia tak boleh ada duplication ataupun lebih daripada 2 number pada dokumen yang berbeza, number yang sama pada dokumen yang berbeza. So from there they know ada something wrong, ada fraud or anything that need to they triggered them to investigate more. Okay, and then the second technique is block codes. So this is block of numbers within the numerical sequence. Okay, they reserve for categories having meaning to the user. So one of the example here is the chart of accounts. Pernah dengar chart of accounts? Kalau you daripada diploma students, you already took paper apa nama AIS, paper AIS that you use the others accounting software. So accounting software biasa dia akan ada chart of accounts. Okay, so chart of accounts. So this is example chart of accounts. Okay, kalau you refer your textbook also they have a sample of chart of accounts for SNS. Okay, table 2.2. Okay, so if you can see here the block codes ni, they already block numbers. Then they reserve that block numbers for the specific categories of data. For example, from kalau you refer to this slide, from 1 to 100 is category under current asset. Okay, so 101 to 200 is for the fixed asset. So any items under current asset will be put under number 1 to 100 and so on. Okay, so they already block the numbers, and then that block numbers reserved to categories that have meaning to the users. Okay, so kalau you refer to this slide, chart of accounts, current asset, you see the current asset here, number 1110 for the petty cash, 120 is cash in bank. So all this account is under current asset. So we put assign the number between 1 to 100. Okay, so when they use this kind of techniques, they can allow insertion of the new codes. So if let's say maybe in the company they only have these 5 accounts under current asset, but maybe in the future they have additional current asset, so they just can insert the number within that block numbers. Okay, okay, the next is group codes. Group codes used to represent complex items or events involving 2 or more pieces of related data. And then often these group codes used in conjunction with the block code. So for example here, can you refer to this number? So refer here, a coding scheme for tracking sales. So they have 04-09-47621-99. So actually the number yang panjang ni, ini ada each of the group have their meaning and related data about it. Okay, for example, 04 is represent the store number. Okay, maybe they have number, ada number 03, maybe the store number 403 and so on. Okay, and then this the next digit, okay, is for the department number. And okay, and then the next 6 digit is for the item number. Okay, and then the last 2 digit is for the salesperson. Okay, so this is we call as the group code. Okay, so this kind of technique they can facilitate the large amounts of data. Okay, so kalau you pernah tengok Chap, okay, Chap kalau Chap number biasa dipanjang, Chap number tu kan, so itu pun ada meaning dia. So each of the numbers tu, the digit tu represent the data, represent the information, okay, related to data. Okay. Okay, so the next, okay, the last one, the techniques, they call it as the mnemonic codes. Okay, so they for the mnemonic codes ni, they use letters and numbers, the combination of letters and numbers to identify the item. Okay, so the code is derived from the description of the item and usually easy to memorize. For example, you use the coding for your courses, tax 467, AIS 615. So the combination of number and letters, and then also we describe, okay, what's the item all about. Okay, and also this, when they use this one, they are more using to easy to memorize the coding. Okay, so they call it the mnemonic codes. Alright, so those are the 4 coding. Okay, and then for the companies, when they want to use all those techniques, whether the combination of the techniques or they use any one of the techniques, so they have some guidelines here for the companies that should be follow. Okay, so first one, they need to be consistent. Okay, the coding should be consistent with the intended use. Okay, so that they require the code designer can determine the types of system output desired by the user. Okay, prior to the selecting code. So if they want to use certain codes too, they first when they want to design the coding, they need first determine the types of system output, how the system output, what are the types of the system output that desired by the users, and then they use those coding. Then the coding should be consistent, okay, to its intended use. Alright, then they also have to ensure the code allows for growth in the number of items. So for example, if they use the block codes just now, so block codes, they have they block the number for the specific categories. So they can have the expectation, the growth of the data that to that category. For example, kalau asset, okay, asset, kalau you refer to this that sample of the chart of accounts just now, they put 1 to 100. So tak ada kos 1 hingga 20. Okay, so they kalau sampai 20, maknanya they just limit, they have 20 asset only. So when they want to design the coding, so they have to thinking also in the future the growth of the number or items, okay, that reserved to the coding tu. Okay, then make the coding simple as possible. Okay, so they can minimize the cost, they can facilitate the memorization of the coding, okay, and then also the interpretation of the coding category. Okay, and then also the simple to acceptable by the employees, okay, to use the coding. Then the fourth one is to ensure the coding system is consistent with the company's organizational structure and consistent with also with the other different division of the organization. So let's say kalau sample the chart of accounts just now, so all other division also use the same coding for the chart of accounts. Okay, so consistent in that way. So those are some of the guidelines to when they want to design the coding. So actually the coding ni is one of the techniques, one of the way how they can organize data. Kita cerita pasal storage tadi kan. So bila dia nak store data, dia nak organize data dalam storage, so they can use coding, so easily for them to access the data. Bila dia nak panggil data daripada sistem, so they can use coding. Okay, and also they manage how they manage data in the storage also easily. When is more easier, they use the coding. Okay. Okay, so this is a sample of chart of accounts that we discussed just now, that you can refer table 2.2. So chart of account is list of JL accounts that organization uses, with each general ledger account being assigned the specific number. Okay, so you can refer table 2.2. Okay, so when they use this chart of accounts, it can facilitate preparation of the financial statements and report, because data are stored in the individual accounts, can easily be summed up for the presentation untuk for the report. Okay, so normally bila kita guna accounting system, dia gunakan chart of accounts. So chart of accounts, they use the coding techniques, okay, to organize the data. Alright, and then on the storage part also, they did discuss about the audit trail. Okay, audit trail. So audit trail when they record data, especially for the accounting data, the accounting data and record should provide the trail. Okay, the trail starting with the source document. Okay, starting for the source document that starting with the source document that support the transaction. Okay, and also all the way through the final posting in the GL ledger account to the financial statement. So kalau you refer to this table ataupun to the figure 2.2 in your text, okay, ataupun you can refer in my slide ni. So this is referred to the sales, credit sales. Okay, so kalau you refer to this figure 2.2, you can see the tracing. You can refer to post reference tu, post reference column. Okay, so each of the sales journal, general ledger, they have post reference column. So this is how they do tracking the transaction in each of the documents ataupun in each of the records. So starting from the source document sampailah dia produce the output, the financial statement. The tracking also can do backwards daripada financial statement sampailah to the source document. So actually the audit trail, they can provide a means to check the accuracy and validity of the ledger posting. So actually the audit trail is very important, especially kalau you kerja as the auditor. Okay, the audit trail is important, because kalau ada berlaku fraud or anything, so dia akan track, okay, daripada awal tu transaction occur sampailah dia keluarkan transaction tu dalam financial statement. So dia akan trace semua perjalanan posting of the transaction tu dalam records. Alright. So you can see in this figure 2.2, the audit trail for the invoice 156, okay, for the figure 1876.5 ni, sold to the KDR builders, okay, sampailah dalam account receivable pun dia boleh trace this transaction. Okay, so that's another thing that importance in the storage, so they can provide the audit trail. Especially based on the control lah, okay, they can check the accuracy and validity of the transaction. Okay, so they can trace path of the transaction through the data processing system. Okay. Okay, the next one is related to the computer-based storage. Computer-based storage concept. Okay, so this is where kalau you refer page 64, they just discuss a part of it. Okay, this is where I relate also in the chapter 4. Okay, chapter 2 tu ada sikit saja, but I also add additional that relate to the chapter 4. So chapter 4 tu pun actually cover in your syllabus lah, tapi not all in the chapter 4. Just we give you the overview of the relational database. So computer based storage concept, actually they simpan dalam sistem lah. Of course the data dia store in the database. Okay, so database is the set of interrelated centrally coordinated file. So they store data in one place that we call as a database. So actually database, they have many types of database, but for your concern here, we refer to this type. We call it as relational database. Okay, kalau you refer to my slide, so this is database on the school database. So in this school database, okay, they have data related to the school. Of course lah, kita cerita pasal school kan. So all the data centrally coordinated in this database. They have data related to students, related to the instructor, related to the schedule of class, related to the student schedule, and so on. So anything related to the school, they store it in one place. Okay, that we call database. So for the purpose that we mentioned about relational database, so in relational database, dia store data in the table, dalam bentuk table. Contoh macam ni. Okay, so for each of the data, for example tadi kita ambil school database just now, we have student, instructor, and so on. So we take one example here. They want to store data about the student. So all the information about the student, they store it in one table. Okay, so one table ni. So ini you imagine lah, disimpan dalam table ni. So this is relational database in the table. So they have terms used untuk database ni. Dia gunakan term-term yang dia tersendiri. Okay, so kalau you refer page 64, okay, that one is all the terms that I summarize in this slide. Okay, first one we call entity. What is the entity that we referred for? So anything data that we want to collect data for our interest in the, contohnya dalam school tadi. So we have interest to collect data related to student, related to the lecturer, to class schedule. So those are the entity. Okay, something about which information is stored. So we want to store data related to student, related to the lecturer, instructor, related to the class schedule. Okay, so that we call it as the entity. So entity is not actually referred to the physical sahaja. Macam kalau contoh student, you can see it physically. You want to store data about the student, but it also can be the event. Macam class schedule, kita tak nampak class schedule tu kan. So that's we consider as the event. So sometimes the event also we need to store data related to the event. So anything about which information we want to store about, so we call it as the entity. So for this case, student is our one of the entity in the school database. Okay, and then if you imagine the table of course there are row and columns, right? So each column that represent in the table, we call it as the attributes. Okay, so you can refer to the student table here. Each of the column is the attributes. So what is the attributes? Okay, attributes is the characteristic of interest with respect to entity. So characteristic maknanya kalau student, kita nak tahu dia punya nama dia, the address, okay, the email address, their photos for example. So those are the characteristic of the student. So in the computer based storage concept, the terms used is we call it as the attributes. So in the table, each column will represent the attributes of the entity. Okay, attributes. Then the next one, field. Okay, so kalau you pernah guna Excel, satu kotak tu adalah field kan. So field is the physical space where the attribute is stored. Okay, so macam contoh kat sini, attributes about address. So each of the student tu ada address masing-masing lah. Okay, so where that's where the data about the attributes being stored. Okay, physical space where the attribute is stored. So we call it as the field. Kita namakan dia field. Okay, then record. Okay, record a row of fields that contain data about the various attributes value of the same entity. So records, if we refer to table here, is represent rows. Rows. Okay, kalau you notice here, each row will represent many entities, many attributes. Ni attributes ni, okay, that refer to one entity, one students kan. Okay, so the row of fields that contain data about various attributes of the same entity. Contohnya kat sini entity nama Milton. Okay, so each row is about Milton. Dia punya address, dia punya photo, email address and so on. And then the second row is about Luella. So each row contain data about the entity, about the characteristic dia, about the attributes of entity, same entity. Okay, so in the database we'll call it as a record. Kita panggil dia record. Okay, so they represent the rows in the table. Okay, and then data value. This is the contents of each field within the record. Okay, kalau field tadi is the physical space. So the value in that physical space dalam field tu, we call it as the data value. The content of the field. Okay, within the record. Kita panggil data value. Alright. And then each table is a file. Okay, so dalam satu table ni is all about the students. So this is in the database kita panggil dia file, a group of related records. Related records tadi kan student ni kan, ada student 1, 2, 3 and 4. So all the related students, related records, we group it in one file, which represent one table in the relational database. Okay. Okay. And then in the computer-based storage concept, okay, dia tak panggil ledger. Okay, they call it as the master file. So the master file is equivalent to ledger. They store cumulative information about the entities. So they call it master file. And then the other one is transaction file. This is same as the journal. Kalau dalam physical storage kita panggil journal. So journal, the transaction file contains records of individual transaction that occur during the fiscal period. So they call it as the transaction file. Okay, so those are the terms used in the database. So you should familiar with these terms lah. Kita tak guna journal ledger. And then also when they stored in the table, in the relational database, this is the terms used. Entity, they call record for each of the entity data ni. Okay, and then the characteristic of each of the entity, we call it as the attributes. Then disimpan dalam rows. Okay, and then each it represent column. Okay, and then each row to represent one entity. Okay. Okay, so this is I took from the chapter 4. So if you refer to chapter 4, okay, kalau you ada textbook, please refer chapter 4, page 119, 120. This is I took from the figure 4.1. So this is where the comparison between the file-oriented with the database system. Okay, so kalau you refer to this file approach, okay, file approach, this is data, okay, previously accounting system, okay, ataupun some of the companies, okay, when they use the file approach, they store data based on the program. Okay, contoh kat sini, they have sales program, shipping program and billing program. So the file, if you can see the master file here, master file 1, they have master file 2 and master file 3. And then if you refer to the facts here that record ataupun simpan dalam master file ni, some of the data or facts are duplicate. Kat sini ada fact A, in the file 2 pun ada fact A. and also in the file 3 ada fact A, but at the different file, at the different different storage. In the sales program, they have their own storage. Shipping program, they have their own storage. Billing program, they have their own storage. Okay, so actually this is how the file approach looks like. Okay, so when they use this type of approach, file approach, it can lead to the redundant of data in the files of the separate system. If you can see here, the fact A just now. Okay, so in the file 1 also have the fact A, file 2 also have the fact A. Okay, this is where we call it as a redundancy, because they have a same data but at the different storage. Okay, so we call it as the led to the redundancy. So when they this occur, the redundancy, they can create problem. For example, they store the same data in the 2 or more overlapping files. Okay, and then when they want to have the integration between the files ni, master file 1, master file 2 and master file 3, they will have a problem later. Okay, for example, maybe storage for the fact A in the file 1, they have different structure. In the file 2, they have the different structure or format. So when they have the different structure and format for different files, okay, so they can lead to the problem in the integration of data. Okay, so that's one of the problem lah bila digunakan file approach ni. So to overcome this problem, this is where they come up with the database approach. Okay, so kalau you refer to this database approach, you can see this figure. So they only have one storage. Okay, kalau compared to this one ada 3 at the different program. So for database approach, they have only one place to store data, and then all related data all at one place. So ini yang kita panggil database. Okay, and then they have database management in between. Okay, so if you refer here, database data, the data is independence. Okay, so this is one of the critical features of the database approach. Okay, so the separation of data from the program application that access and process the data. So they have independence of data, and then this data independence achieved by interposting in the database management system software. So this is between the database with the users that they with the program. Okay, and okay, and then as the technology improve, okay, the involvement of technology, many companies are developing very large database that we call data warehouses. So data warehouses used as the analysis to provide support for the strategic decision making. So this is where we mention about the data analytics, okay, that we discussed in the chapter 1. So they use the data warehouse. So data warehouse ni disimpan lagi banyak data lah. Okay, and then they use the data analytics to analyze their data. Okay, and then they use it as to provide for the management, especially for the strategic decision making. Okay. Okay, so this is some of the advantages. Okay, for the database. Okay, the first one, data is integrated. Okay, if you refer to the figure 4.1 just now, so they're centered at one place. Okay, semua data dalam tu, so easily can integrate with the all data in the one place data. So that's one of the advantages of the integration. So they combine into large pools of data that many application program can access to at one place of data. Okay, and then the second one, they can share the data. So kalau you refer to the figure 4.1, all the programs, okay, they share at the same data. So sebab disimpan satu tempat, semua orang boleh share the same data. Okay, okay, then they can minimize the data redundancy and inconsistency. So this is where we discuss just now. So kalau ada banyak tempat disimpan data, dia dah jadi redundancy. So redundancy ni will take many storage place to store data. Okay, and then they give problem untuk integration of data, and then sometimes data also inconsistency in terms of format, in terms of structure of data. Okay, and then data is independent of the program that use the data. Okay, so this is also one of the advantage. And then the last one, data is easily accessed for reporting and across functional analysis. Sebab disimpan satu tempat, so it can be easily accessed. Okay, and then also other program also can use data from the different program, so they can be cross functional analysis. So dia boleh buat cross functional analysis. For example, they can relate data from the selling cost to the promotional campaign, for example. Okay, and also this can facilitate on the preparation on the management report, because it boleh ada relationship between the data dalam satu database tadi. Okay, mungkin daripada sales department dia boleh guna data juga daripada marketing department. So they can have cross functional to do the analysis. Okay, and then other things. Okay, kalau you refer page 1 to 3, 1 to 7 sampai habis chapter 4 tu, actually memang very detail in that chapter 4, but for your purpose, okay, you need to understand the concept of the database. So I attach here, okay, 2 good video from the YouTube, okay, that give easily for you to give a picture about the database that can easily understand for the first time student macam you lah, kalau tak pernah come up know about the database. So please refer to these 2 videos, database tutorial for beginners and relational database concept. So this is also important for the accountants, you nanti jadi accountants, to understand about the database concept, macam mana cara data disimpan dalam database. Okay, so kita dah cerita tadi a little bit of the concept disimpan dalam table dan sebagainya. And then of course dia ada lagi lah dalam database tu, they have many tables, how they going to relate one table to another table. Okay, and then how they can extract data daripada table dan sebagainya. Alright, so for this topic, chapter 4, please refer to these 2 videos. Alright, so this is untuk simplify what are those in the chapter 4 punya topics lah. Alright, okay, so I end this learning objective number 1 sampai data storage. So the next video I will we will discuss on the data processing. Okay, in data processing. Okay, so I see you on the next video.